remember back over the last few weeks as we summarize or sort of take clues from the text that what the heresy was that was endangering the Colossian church, that there were false teachers coming around and they had some kind of mix. We could tell by what Paul says, they've got some mixture of legalistic Judaism, saying you need to obey the law and do the festivals, some mixture of Jewish worship of angels, some inclusion of pagan philosophy and pagan wisdom, and some inclusion of worshiping the vast array of gods, not just one God. And you can tell by the way Paul pushes against all those different things throughout the letter that those were the temptations. Well, there's one thing that was on offer then and continuing through church history by the Gnostics, which was a fullness of knowledge and wisdom. That it's cool to hear that you have Jesus, but there's a fullness that's on it. Don't you just wish you could know the future? Don't you could just talk to God and hear every morning, what should I do today? Don't you wish you could just roll a dice and figure out which gal you're supposed to propose to and figure out when you're supposed to have kids and how many and which job and which house and what the income's going to be and all of that? Don't you just wish you had the full access to knowledge? And Paul's swiping that off the table and saying, you have access, you have the ability to be filled with knowledge and wisdom, spiritual knowledge, spiritual wisdom. The heretics don't have anything to offer you. He's saying here, when he says knowledge of his will, we could be tempted to sort of take that on face value and think, like Romans 12, verse 1 and 2, this is him saying, if you renew your mind, you'll know God's will for your life. Colossians 1:9 is not talking about God's will for your life, it's talking about God's will overarching for the whole world. He's saying that if you have this all spiritual knowledge and wisdom of his will, if you look at the way that Paul talks through Colossians, and of course in other letters, you see that he's really talking about the overarching will of God to reconcile all things to himself through the cross. That he has an overarching will for the nations, that people would be saved throughout them all, and that they would bend the knee to Christ as Lord. He has this overarching will for the church, and that she would be made holy and beautiful and glorious. And that's the will that he's talking about. The plan of God, the mission of God, the purposes of God. That's what he means by you increasing in the knowledge of his will. That's what he means. So that really does include and encompass all theology, all of the Bible, all knowledge about God is going to be included in that understanding. And therefore he's praying that you would have the knowledge of that will, or the knowledge of Jesus and salvation in him. You would have that knowledge in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. If I was to introduce you to somebody, an auntie at a birthday party, or you go to another church, one where there's a bit more dancing, and you sit down and somebody introduces you to a friend and says, this is Carl, he has great spiritual wisdom. Your initial assumption is not that he's a great theologian. Is that just me? If you sat down next to somebody and they said, this is my Auntie Beryl and she's got spiritual understanding, you'd go, great. What is she going to try and tell me? It sounds more, you'd assume somebody who can see your auras or can, feel your star sign and can sense your Enneagram and have this real ethereal kind of heavenliness about them. They've got the spiritual wisdom. They've got the spiritual knowledge. They can read the days and know when Jesus is coming back. They got it all. They know exactly what prophecies are being fulfilled anywhere around the universe. They've got this deeper insight. They can read the Bible but then read the words beneath the Bible. You know what I mean? We need to realize that to Paul, all spiritual knowledge, spiritual wisdom, being a spiritual person means that you're somebody who knows the depths and the width and the heights of the glory of the gospel of Jesus. The Holy Spirit-filled person, the person with a spiritual mind in 1 Corinthians 2, is somebody who knows and loves and understands the gospel. That's one of the main things. That's one of the key markers. You ask the question, what is the marker of somebody being spirit-filled? Friends, it's a deep, profound, practical, applicable knowledge of the scriptures. That's the spirit-filled person.